paper, if you can sign your name and where you're from. This.
I know this, but I'm not giving this back.
I thank you guys so much, and I'm so sorry that it's so late. I promise I'm going to try and
We're
summarize.
sorry that it's so
That's
late.
okay.
It's the way it
It's
is.
okay.
So sorry.
Thank you so much for having me and for your time. My name is Alexandra Ponsica. Please bear with me. First of all, my twins today won their Mind Traveler Award, so thank you so much for that. That was very inclusive of you, and they worked really hard for that, and really, really appreciate it. Backstory, my husband and I have 4 children. You might have seen them. We have always loved Vernon. We grew up in northern New Jersey and started dating in our high school, got married at 18. We moved away while my husband served in the Marine Corps, and we returned when he got out in 2014 with our 2-year-old twins to make Vernon our home. Backstory, our boys are non-speakers, an umbrella term for those who are non-speaking, minimally speaking, and unreliably speaking. I choose to use the term non-speakers because the word nonverbal in Latin means without words, of which our boys and other non-speakers are certainly not. You see, speech and language are 2 very different things. Language is 100% cognition and speech is 100% motor. Receptive language takes place in a part of the brain called Wernicke's area, where information is absorbed and comprehended. Expressive language takes place in Broca's area, where thoughts and ideas about the information being absorbed are formed. Both of these areas of the brain are fully intact in our non-speaking children with autism and other complex diagnoses, meaning they have no issues comprehending language. This means our children do not have a cognitive disability. Our boys are intelligent, thoughtful, and capable of learning. Instead of a cognitive disability, our children have sensory motor differences that impact their ability to communicate reliably through speech, along with other varying difficulties with motor function. We call this apraxia. Apraxia, often interchangeable with dyspraxia, is a neurological disorder characterized by the loss of the ability to execute or carry out skilled movements and gestures, despite having the desire and the physical ability to perform them. Apraxia makes it hard for people to tell their bodies what to do, often called a brain-body disconnect. We have grossly underestimated our non-speaking population, and we are inherently harming them by treating them as though they have a cognitive disability and are unintelligent. The issues begin with testing. The testing done in the school system to determine intellectuality requires motor, often motor on demand. For our children with sensory motor differences, this is equivalent to giving Stevie Wonders visuals for an IQ test and deeming him unintelligent. To make a long story short, in 2020, we pulled our boys from the district to homeschool since virtual learning was near impossible, as I was at a full-time internship, ironically at the health department, perfect time, right? And we needed to focus on survival. Once I graduated in May, I decided to put all my focus into my kids after all those years of school. During this time, we learned to more than just survive. With a dedicated focus on my boys and with skill progression, I unlocked our children's voices using a method called spelling to communicate, S2C, a form of AAC, alternative and augmentative communication. While their voices continue to emerge, they have been able to express themselves to me by poking to letters on a letterboard, spelling out words and sentences in a very meaningful way that we never thought possible. This method takes the fine motor out of speech and brings it to a gross motor function. With proper implementation of skill progression, my boys will eventually have the ability to move to a keyboard where they can independently type their own thoughts and feelings, giving them back autonomy over their life decisions. It has changed absolutely everything for our family, from the way that we view their condition to how we interact with each other. We re-enrolled our boys back into Vernon school system in the fall of 2021. I had 2 conditions when re-enrolling. 1, their medical exemptions to mass were to be honored, and it was. It was a relief. And 2, that spelling to communicate be implemented as their AAC method. Upon learning my conditions and once we re-enrolled, we were offered an AAC evaluation. In all the years that we have been in the district, this was the first exposure we ever had to being offered an AAC evaluation, which I now realize has been a tremendous communication loss for my boys, as it was only offered once I proposed our method of AAC that I found. So we began our journey to attain AAC in the school system. Since then, I have been patiently advocating for this method of communication that we successfully use at home to be implemented for our boys. I want to be very clear about the skill progression aspect of S2C. It's not magic that they can communicate. We worked extremely hard to get here. At the time when we re-enrolled my boys in November of 2021, they were only at the acquisition stage of S2C, where they were still building up the necessary skills to become open on their letterboards, a term used to describe communicating their own thoughts and feelings. They were using 3 letterboards with large letters to build up the proper motor skills. As of today's date, they have both graduated to the 26 letterboard and have achieved the ability to be open on their letterboards. One son more advanced than the other at the moment, but both have been able to communicate their thoughts and feelings. In fact, this morning, Noah spelled to me, "My intuition is that none of the people there understand why we are receiving the award." As of today, we are open, but we are not fluent. Fluency is our next and final stage, a term used when a student can openly express themselves at any given time, place, and with many people, like learning to become fluent in a new language. It may start off choppy, but you can still communicate. But once you reach fluency, you are having elaborate conversations with ease. Make sense? Over the past 3 years, I have surrounded myself and met enough fluent spellers to know that this method works, especially since when I started it, so did a dozen of my friends that I am connected with through other endeavors, and I watched them transition from not communicating to fully communicative. Anyway, you can imagine my surprise when the Vernon Township District denied my boys this method of communication and continues to do so. It was verbally expressed to me reasons for denial, of which I have complete rebuttals. However, I'm not being given a chance to rebut it because we have not received anything in writing that states we have been denied our request, reasons for denial, and it has not been written in their IEPs. We have requested prior written notice for denial of spelling to communicate several times without success. In school, my boys are limited, even with their current recommended AAC devices, of which my one son isn't even properly using, and unable to adequately communicate their thoughts, ideas, wants, and needs with their teachers and the school staff. They do not have access to curriculum in the long-term goal of achieving an academic high school diploma. The work they are doing in school is not age appropriate. This means my boys who are intelligent, thoughtful, and capable of learning are not being educated. Having made those statements, I need to state explicitly that considering our circumstances, we do feel we have an incredible teacher, Mrs. Jensen. I don't think we would have survived without her. We also love and appreciate all the aides, the therapists, and extracurricular teachers. And honestly, we feel we have a very kind, well-meaning IEP staff. I want to be very clear that this is not an attack on any single staff member or group of staff members. I have a problem with the system serving our children. Our well-meaning staff are not being given the training or the essential tools to educate my children. And if it's a problem for my twins, it's a problem for other children in the district. At home, utilizing S2C, we are learning elaborate topics that are age appropriate and often advanced. During these lessons, my boys are able to showcase their reading comprehension skills and abilities. At home, my boys have expressed to me through spelling how they feel about their current circumstances in school. They love their peers and want to be included, but they feel absolutely devastated, marginalized, and living in a prison of silence, being denied access to robust communication, and it's making them grow weary. You can imagine the way we are headed right now is completely unsustainable and unacceptable. I have no choice but to pool my own funds and resources to meet the very dire needs of my special needs twins and build for them what they need. Furthermore, how many other non-speakers in the district are suffering the way my boys are without even raising the surface of being able to unlock their prison of silence? You may have heard about the non-speaker Elizabeth Bonker in the media. She was a Sussex County local who was also denied her basic human right to communication, yet she beat all odds and graduated as valedictorian of Rollins College. There are so many things Caleb and Noah are not receiving because they do not have access to their preferred method of communication. And lastly, I recently re-educated myself on the history of the Braille system for the blind. Coincidentally, January is National Braille Literacy Month. In the early 1800s, blind individuals were often thought of as mentally retarded because there was no method to measure intelligence since they could not read or write. The early method of teaching blind individuals to read and write was through an embossed letter system of Valentine Hoy. Captain Barbier, a retired artillery captain in the French army, invented a secret military code based on dots and dashes punched into strips of cardboard called sonography, meaning sound writing. A blind 12-year-old child, Louis Braille, wanted to simplify Barbier's invention to make it more practical for himself and his fellow blind students. By the time Louis was 20 years old in 1829, he had finally perfected his system, and his fellow blind students became experts at the Braille system. The only method approved by the French government was the embossed letter system, and it was not easy to change established customs. In 1840, a new director, Armand Duffiau, of their school for the blind, felt the Braille system was too radical, and he banned it. He confiscated all textbooks, pamphlets, every slate and stylus he could find. The students rebelled and secretly continued to use the Braille system and taught it to their younger students. The director hired a new assistant, Joseph Gaudet, who was won over by the students that he caught using the Braille system in secret. The assistant pleaded with the director to reconsider. Braille system might be banned from the classroom, but Gaudet realized that it could never be banished from the students' minds. After some hesitation, he went to the director and urged him to reconsider. He told Duffiau that Braille system would sooner or later be taken up by the blind people everywhere. No one, he argued, could stop the adoption of the system any more than he could stop the movements of the sun and the moon. We have an army of spellers waiting to have their voice heard. I will not stop until the system changes so that my boys and every non-speaker out there are given access to their basic human right to communication and given an opportunity for a free and appropriate education. I fervently believe in every non-speaker, not just my voice. Every single one of their voices deserves to be heard, and no one can stop the adoption of the system of spelling to communicate any more than he could stop the movements of the sun and the moon. So I just ask you, please, to listen to our non-speakers. Thank you.
Alexandra, thank you so much for sharing your story. It was very, very moving, and it really educated us, so thank you.